Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I'm going to be joined by two guests. I'm going to be joined by Joe Abeln and Gina Baldwin. Joe is from Ostef Group, and Gina is from Felons, who we are going to talk to about the Slam Industry Group, which is a part of MHI. And you see Gina there giving the old
Yeah.
slam on the video. We love the name
Sure.
there. Very great name to have, right? But we're going to talk into, we're going to talk about exactly what does SLAM mean? What does it stand for, right? Because it's an acronym. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how that kind of situates within the warehouse workflow and how we can leverage some different solutions and opportunities to be a little more sustainable within the warehouse, particularly within that SLAM workflow as well. So, Joe and Gina, welcome to the show. How are you both?
Wonderful.
Good. Thanks for
Yeah, thanks a lot, Kevin.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Happy to get you both on. Happy to talk about this. I think this is a very interesting part of the warehouse in a sense, and I think the approach and focus to sustainability. I think we'll find out today. There's a lot of potential opportunity there, and some interesting things going on, which we'll learn about. So, I guess Joe, why don't you kick us off here for people that are maybe don't know what SLAM stands for and what it really encompasses within the operation and warehouse. Kind of enlighten us here and tell us what it's all
Yeah,
about.
absolutely. So SLAM stands for specifically scan, label, apply, manifest. It was really coined by Amazon, I think back, as the automation leader in our industry, but it's really been adopted by anyone that has a fulfillment center, e-commerce distribution, really any company that is, or any warehouse that is fulfilling orders, getting product out the door. A SLAM line is a part of that process. Part of the SLAM process, another way to think about it, is the last 100 feet before it goes out the door. So you're scanning a
Mm,
product, you print and apply a label, often a shipping label. So that's the label and apply part of the acronym. And then the manifest, right? So that includes perhaps sortation system, getting it onto the truck. So it's that last bit of the product life cycle right before it exits the warehouse. Gina, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add there.
well, I would just say selfishly, packaging is a part
Yeah,
of
of
that
course.
as well. Um,
mm,
but it's just not tied into the acronym. So really what we're looking at is everything after the order's been picked until it gets out the door. But Joe's completely accurate in describing where it came from and the general sense of SLAM. But as a group, I would say all of our member companies are in little bits and pieces of Slam or silent packaging slam line as well.
Silent packaging.
Yes.
I was thinking in my head like splam, slamp. Well, like where would you put the P in there? Interesting, but yeah, I mean, I think very important note there,
We
Gina.
were-
Of course, because when you talk about the label and apply, right? Like, I mean, what are you putting that label on in a sense, right? Some type of packaging, right? Has to be so that last 100 feet there, as you said, within the DC, and obviously, a critical component of the overall warehouse workflow. I mean, I often say on the podcast here that your warehouse in general and your operations people, they're like your last line of defense for the business, right? I mean, they're the last people that are
100%.
gonna touch that product before it gets to your customer. And from the slam perspective, I mean, that's literally like the last line of defense right before it's going out the door. So I guess tell us from your perspective, and I guess the industry group's perspective. I mean, how much importance does this slam process in the workflow? I mean, how much importance does that hold for not only just the operation, the warehouse itself, but I guess just the business in general?
Yeah, I can start off here. I would say historically, a lot of times fulfillment centers focus on automating the picking area and the packaging and slam lines kind of stay manual. And really then that can lead into some bottlenecks of actually getting the order out the door, just like you said. And that still plays a huge role from a customer perspective of just demanding orders to come even faster. And so, even though you might be able to pick the order really fast, there still has to be a focus when it comes to the end of line and getting the orders out the door. Um, but in terms of, okay, what does this space mean to the customer and from a business standpoint, it's what allows you to make sure that you're shipping the correct order to the right person
Mm,
because of how you're labeling it accurately and also doing some scanning verification. It's the area that ensures the order arrives undamaged because you're using the accurate packaging materials because for each product. And from my perspective, e-commerce and the unboxing experience, that plays a huge role when it comes to repeat purchases and brand loyalty. So even though they've already placed the order, if you're not able to, in this last 100 feet of fulfillment, um, put everything together in the correct way, what the customer is expecting, or even meet over excel and meet their expectations, then that could impact your future business.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a great point there because, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do, I think all around is give that consumer the best experience possible. And I think we've all gotten a bad package in our lives, I'm sure, and it's not a very great experience at all. And as you mentioned, this the slam part of the workflow is certainly a big factor in making sure that happens there. And I think there's a lot of things going on in that area, right? And there's a lot of opportunity to not only be more efficient, more productive, doing things there, but there's also very high volume moving through that, especially from like an e-commerce operation perspective. And I know Joe, you mentioned Amazon kind of coining this term, and obviously they're doing a ton of volume, right? I'm sure we see out there, but that high volume moving through there, I think lends itself to a lot of potential opportunity, right? And part of the slam too, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is label in a sense, right? Which is traditionally like some kind of paper or something like that. But if we look at high volume moving through the fulfillment center and ultimately moving through this slam part, how does that kind of increase the opportunity, maybe for potential issues around sustainability, and then I guess maybe also opportunities to be more sustainable too, because you have such a high impact from that high volume. So, Gina, you want to tell us a little bit about some of the opportunities, or I guess the issues? Maybe we'll start with first.
Yeah, I would say the issues tend to come from being more of a manual process,
Mm,
since it is heavily operator driven. So with that, you have somebody that might put too much void fill or too little. The need for at pack out stations need to stock a wide variety of box and bag sizes and types to be at the ready for whatever order comes, especially in e-commerce, all that variety, just dependent on what the customer orders. And yeah, a lot of that inconsistency can unfortunately lead to product damage during shipment, which really is probably one of the biggest challenges and pain points when it comes to e-tailers and um,
mm,
having that high volume of returns. It's a significant cost. And there's actually stat that 81% of online shoppers return items due to damage or defect, according to Power Reviews. So it
mm.
it is a significant impact that can be avoided if you're able to lean into some automation to eliminate some of those errors.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you highlighted there certainly what happens right on the back end, I guess, or at the end of the end of the process, a new process essentially starts, right? Which is some type of return or, dissatisfaction from the consumer. But all of those leads to ultimately sustainability issues as well, right? Because now
Mhm.
there's more movement, there's more things that need to happen. There's a huge discussion around returns on, how that's becoming very unsustainable and what that looks like. So I guess tell us, what you identify as some of these like specifically problems around sustainability within the SLAM realm of the warehouse itself.
In terms of, like, future opportunities or, like, the
Well,
specific.
I guess in terms of like right now, current state, if nobody's really focused on this or brought in some of these solutions,
Yeah.
what kind of issues may have an impact there from a sustainability perspective?
Yeah, so looking at, like, selecting the correct size box, or if it's a box, if it's a mailer, there's just such a variety when it comes to, different final shipper options on its own, and you also have to consider, okay, what type of products are we fulfilling? And sometimes it can be easier for fulfillment centers if it's more limited versus, say, like the Amazons of the world that have such a wide variety and being able to tailor it. So um, you have that aspect of it, and also wanting, there's a fine line between having sustainable solutions, but also wanting to make sure that you're protecting the product during shipment.
Mm,
And also meeting customer demand for more sustainable solutions. So I think that's kind of where a lot of our member companies of SLAM within MHI have that focus, because it's no longer just a nice to have. It is something that our customers are demanding. And so we can kind of talk about some of those solutions in unique areas as well later.
mm. Definitely interesting there. Yeah, yeah. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I mean, for potential differences. I mean, and one for me that kind of stood out right away, which is in like the Slam name itself, right? The L there,
Mhm.
and I guess we could say maybe now like that silent P too could be one that stands out too, right? But the L, right, in Slam, stands for label, right? As Joe told us in the beginning of the conversation here, and obviously when we think about a label, a label is being generated typically on some type of paper, and then you're peeling the label off and there's backing on that and then that gets discarded, right? So obviously we can lean towards that to see that like, oh, there's a lot of kind of waste in a sense being generated there, maybe opportunity for that. So I'm curious, Joe, if we look at the Slam industry group itself and just companies that are a part of that group, how are they kind of looking at different ways to make this part, specifically labeling, be a little more sustainable?
Great question. I just wanted to make one comment about something that you and Gina were just talking about, right? The high volume,
Sure.
it really equals high impact, right? Every product that goes
Mm,
out the door goes through your packaging and slam line. So if you make a sustainable improvement, that improvement
Mhm.
occurs over every single product that you send out. So from a sustainability perspective, if you're making a poor decision, it compounds. Or if you're making a great decision, that also compounds. So
For
it's a
sure.
really important for companies that are starting to focus on this sustainability, that this could be the most important aspect of their warehouse operation when it comes to the sustainability aspect. So leading into the labeling portion, every product
mm,
needs a label. And like you said today, the standard is die cut labels, 4x6, 4x8 shippers um, that get applied to every box or every bag going out the door. So at a Slam Industry Group, what we're trying to do is be on the leading edge of what technology, what materials are available or will be available to make this process as sustainable as possible moving forward. So with labeling, one of the big improvements that has come up recently is the linerless labels. So you have,
Mm,
again, the standard is die cut, right? You have um, the backing paper that ultimately, at the end of the day, it's just there to help to release the label off, and it just gets thrown in the garbage. People don't even think about it. So one of the areas that has really improved over the last few years has been that linerless label. Um, there are still challenges with it. It's still, there's still things that we're working through to make it as efficient and as available as the die cut labels are. But there are a lot of aspects when it comes to that piece of it specifically. You can get as, you even look upstream from even the actual applying of the label. Well, if you don't have the liner that ultimately gets wrapped up, you're actually shipping less material to your facility because there is less material on every roll. Then you get to the actual applying of the label. An e-commerce company, for example, they might do rate shopping, right? Which allows them to
mm,
choose, oh, I'm going to use FedEx versus UPS or Amazon or whatever, whoever the shipper is, because they have a better rate. Well, some shipping labels have different sizes, right? So you might have a 4x8 shipping label and then a 4x6 shipping label. Well, if you're a company that does that rate shopping, you have to use a 4x8 die cut label, regardless of
yeah.
the uh, the shipper that you're using. So with a linerless label, you can actually cut that label to size, and you don't have to print a full 8-inch label every single time. So there's a lot of
Mm,
interesting things that come with something like a linerless label. It's again just a very interesting place, and fortunately, the people who work on the label construction are getting a lot better at it. So it makes it more available and uh, as effective as the die cut labels.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting. And I think, to echo what you're saying there about, the high volume equaling high impact. I mean, I think that's so true. Because, even, I used to do a lot of like continuous improvement projects and operations I worked in. And, you save a couple seconds, right, on one task, but then you extrapolate it out over, a week, a month, a year. It's several hours, right, of savings, which, ultimately obviously equals cost at the end of the day too as well. But I think this is a great, testament to where, because I think there's often been kind of this narrative, and I think it's changing a little bit, right? But this narrative that, oh, if we go green or we become more sustainable, it's going to cost us more money, right? But in a sense, like we look at this, I mean, there's cost saving aspect to that, right? In a sense as well, and you're becoming more sustainable as an organization overall. So I guess from the sustainability aspect as well, I think another part within the SLAM process is certainly the packaging itself, right? Before it gets to the label, whether that's from the box perspective, the dunnage perspective, the tape perspective, everything that's going to protect that product, as Gina has been talking about here. So I guess Gina, I think you're a packaging, right, fan here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that aspect, and what opportunities are there around the packaging itself, or even what are some of the innovative things that people are doing?
Sure. Kind of touching on the label perspective, but from a internal operations standpoint, there is also the ability to print the license plate, which is that unique barcode that represents
Mm,
all items within the multi-item order, directly onto a paper banding material. So benefit of that is elimination of the extra step in the process,
mm,
reduction of the label and liner in that case. And then also when you think about the end customer recycling standpoint, it's all one piece. So you don't have to worry about any additional steps from a recycling standpoint. But like I mentioned before, we're a pretty fun, innovative group of people on the Slam team, and just want to highlight a couple of examples of unique ways to be more sustainable. One being reducing the amount of air that's being shipped on each truck. One way to be able to do that is obviously by right sizing your final shipper, but also how are you efficiently loading all of the final shippers into the truck to be able to maximize full capacity of the amount of orders going into each truck. And really, the benefit there is being able to have less trucks on the road, and that significantly impacts the reduction in CO2 emissions.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point there too as well because even though the truck is not necessarily a part of the operation in most cases, right? Some companies obviously do own their own trucks as well, but most of the time we're talking kind of a lot here about parcel shipments and things like that. Typically, it's going on to like a FedEx or UPS trailer or a regional carrier or something like that, and there's a lot of opportunity there, like you said, to reduce the amount of air within that package and ultimately reduce the amount of air that's going into that truck. And over time, we're talking about high impact, right? Over time, reducing the amount of trailers you're ultimately using, right? And you're
Mm.
shipping, 25% air in a trailer or something like that. That's not good.
Yeah. One other example I did want to mention is in my realm of banding, I would say historically, paper banding material used to require a layer of plastic in order for it to
Mm,
adhere to itself. And now there is 100% plastic free paper banding material out there on the market. So it's just another example of how some of these regulations really drive innovation on
mm.
our end. And so being able to offer something that can help reduce the use of single use plastics is definitely growing in popularity as well.
Mm. Interesting. Definitely good to know there. And you bring up a good point there as well around, sustainability, and some of these innovations are kind of being maybe pushed a little bit or driven by some regulation changes, right? Certainly. But I guess tell us too, I mean, what do you see as companies are coming up with these different ways of doing the things that we've traditionally done and looking at it from a more sustainable aspect? I mean, do you see a lot more influence from companies themselves asking for different types of solutions, or do you see it from kind of the consumer pushing this? I mean, aside from regulations, obviously, like where we have to comply, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what other influences are kind of helping these solution providers to kind of push their product forward or come up with new ways to do traditional things?
Um, I would say all the above.
Yeah.
You said
Okay.
what's
Yeah.
impacting it is definitely a combination of regulations and
Mhm.
consumer demand. And really, when you backtrack to when COVID hit, everybody was getting all this mail on their doorsteps. And so I think that's really
Mhm.
what kind of sparked a lot of this green initiative and really demand from customers saying, no, we want our brands to do better and stop shipping us a box in a box and all the void fill
Mm.
inside it. But Joe wasn't sure if you had anything else that you wanted to add to that.
Yeah. I think consumer behavior is also a huge portion of this, right? Especially as,
Mm.
sustainability becomes more top of mind. Consumers can vote with their dollars. And if they
Yeah.
get, like Gina mentioned, a poor opening experience because I just got a bag full of bags with each individual item wrapped in a single use plastic bag, there are consumers out there that may decide, I'm actually not going to purchase from the company again because I didn't like this experience and the fact that I'm throwing away all this plastic.
Mm.
So that has to be a serious consideration for especially right the e-tailers and who are they selling to? Um, you know, In the United States, especially, the sustainability regulations are not as stringent. Of course, I think they will probably get there, which, Gina, maybe it is worth talking about some of those EPR initiatives that have been released recently. But um, again, it's really important for any e-commerce type company, anyone who's shipping direct to consumer, to consider the buying habits of the people that they sell to, and how the packaging itself and the experience, and how that relates to the same sustainability impact. Um, you know, Again, the consumers vote with their dollars, and if you want to sell to the younger generation that's up and coming, and they care about sustainability, then that needs to be a priority for your business.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think we can see out there too. I mean, there's even like I see on LinkedIn all the time, and I see like on Reddit as well, people posting, they get this small tiny thing in like a huge box, right? Or, all this extra packaging and things like that. And I think the most recent one I saw actually, I think was very funny was it was this guy ordered actually boxes, like moving boxes.
Mm.
But I guess they set it up in the way in the system that, you know, was the size of the box when it was, expanded and built,
Oh,
right?
no.
So he had like 20 or 30 large shipping boxes like on his driveway, and each one of them had like one single moving box in them. Which goes to show like how much of like just an impact, right, that could have, because you think about these like 20 large shipping boxes, how much space that takes up in a truck too, and all these things. And the customer obviously thought it was ridiculous enough to post a video about or something, right, to social media.
Right.
And it's just kind of it goes to show like that impact there. So Joe, you mentioned something in there about EPR regulation that Gina may want to talk about. So Gina, tell us what that's all about. I don't know what that is.
Sure. The extended producer
Responsibility. Yeah.
responsibility. Thank you. Yes. I would say in general, just to kind of go back to what Joe was saying, is that in general, how it's gone is Europe will have very strict mandates when it comes to sustainability. And then here in the US, if you are a global company, you're already addressing it there, and that kind of trickles in a little bit to the US, or it's companies that just really want um, to promote that, yes, we are taking this seriously without being forced to. I would say with EPR, it is in several of the US states, but there's a lot of uncertainty of what does that actually mean to me as a business owner, of how how are they going to track things and all of that. So really what I've seen is it's just been noted as, okay, these regulations are probably going to be coming. Um, let's see what we can do to adjust our current operations, and what incremental things can be done to try to be more sustainable.
So as an example, I think one of the latest ones was New Jersey came out with, I don't know if it's written into law yet, but it's part of the process now, where basically extending the responsibility